About a year ago, I decided to create a video talking about why I wanted to drop out, critiquing the school structure and curriculum which I was studying back then. 1 year later, I just wanted to do an update video talking about how my thoughts have drastically changed, breaking down each and every single subject and talking about the entire school system again. And if you're watching this video, chances are you've been starting to question on whether or not the school system that you're currently in would be an effective vehicle to delivering you from the person you are now to the career or passion that you want to pursue 10 years or 20 years down the line. And right now, I've started to take my first semester of the IB diploma program, which is a college level course taken in the last 2 years, so junior and senior year in my school. And seriously, this course have literally blown me away on what education can feel like. This is funny, bro. But someone just suddenly, opened the curtain up there on the left side and just stared at me. So like, all right. And I think one of the things that people really underestimate with this whole school experience is that school is an experience, as I've literally said just now. It's an experience to build, friendships, to build lifelong partners, which you can eventually create businesses with, and just meet so many different variety of people that you wouldn't have met if you actually dropped out of school or if you're not pursuing something in a community. Anyways, just watching back the entire dropout video that I made about 8 months ago, which I will also link in the description below if you're interested to see my reaction and see how my thoughts changed bit by bit. One of the things that I noticed that school does not do, which is causing a problem to many people, especially those who are not, as proactive or as, you would say someone who haven't found their purpose yet in life or who hasn't had the motivation to do something, is that school does not teach you how you can apply specific subjects to fields that you personally want to pursue in the future. So let me break down actually all the subjects that I take right now and how it would apply to my future career, which I'm going to pursue something venture capital related or something startup related. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to see how you can make these correlations and make these pattern identifications between all the subjects that you're taking and how this can have a great impact on what you want to pursue in the future. Starting out with what subjects I currently do, the IB diploma program requires you to do 6 subjects, 3 in the higher level and 3 in the standard level. Higher level just means that you'll be delving deeper into the subject, basically having more content where you're going to be having 2 classes rather than 1 class in the standard level. So the subjects that I'm studying right now in the higher level includes English, language and literature, business management, and mathematics analysis and approach. And in the standard level, the courses that I'm taking is Chinese B, ESS, which stands for Environmental Systems and Societies, and finally also film. I don't know why I said film like that, but yes, I did film. Funny story actually was that in the beginning, it wasn't actually like this, as I decided to switch my course halfway into it or a couple months into the program. And let me just tell you the reason why. So initially, I chose to do computer science in the higher level, but now I've switched computer science out for film. So what happened was that I thought in the beginning I was able to take the computer science course mainly because I have some coding experience and I have actually pre-learned most of the theory content about 1 year before the course even started. But then when I progressed into the course 2 months in, I realized that computer science may not be a course that interests myself. So therefore, I decided to talk to my counselor, talk to my parents and switch over to doing film instead. And yeah, one of the funny things is that many people would critique this move, mainly because probably you heard about how computer science is a more competitive course rather than doing film, which is seen as less competitive because it is an art subject. However, after rethinking about why I'm even doing the IB diploma course in the beginning and what I really want to invest myself in 2 years' time, really the answer stuck with film and learning about all the history of film and how this can relate to business itself, because as you can see, I really love creating videos and I really want to study deeply in how film can really impact an individual's mind and convey the message that the author wants to create, just like in this video itself. And yeah, guys, I'm starting to feel a bit sunburnt right now, so I'm gonna just quickly move the camera while I continue to talk. Hopefully you guys can still see me. Let's do something like this. Should be better. Let's see. Alright guys, hopefully you guys can see me well. I have actually created some bullet point notes relating to each subject and how I see this translating into the future career that I'm going to be pursuing, which is business. So starting off with English. I think many people see English as a subject that's kind of annoying because you just have to write essays, right? And especially in the IB diploma program, most of the summatives are just writing essays. So what they'll basically do is they'll give you literally an advertisement. So for example, they'll give you an advertisement about, let's just name any single company. Let's just say Apple, and they'll tell you to analyze it and how they convey the message and sort of something like that. And what I actually think English could do is that it could help make you think more contextually and creatively and make you realize that all pieces of content is trying to communicate some sort of idea. And I feel like this is a really effective point because if you're just looking at the business world, every single piece of advertisement is trying to convey a piece of idea, right? They're trying to sell your product, sell your message, right? Even if it's propaganda, even if it's government flyers or whatever, they're trying to sell you an idea. So by studying these literature, you're able to study a form of how you're able to convey the message. And again, this is the same thing with film and some other subjects as well. It's just a different vehicle. Film, you're just doing it through videos. And English, you're just analyzing it through either reading a book or through an advertisement. And in English, it's split into two different papers. So the final exam, you're going to have your paper 1, your paper 2, your IOs. For those who take IB, you probably know this already. But basically, paper 1 is analyzing an ad. And as I've already explained, it helps you identify the message of the ad and how this can be effective in developing your critical thinking as well, because you can place yourself into the company's eyes and think about how you can appeal to your target audience, right? So for example, if you're trying to sell baby products, you probably want to appeal to parents, right? Parents with infants. So by placing yourself in the lens of a parent's infant, you can talk about the values, the pain points, right, of what they have, and then use that to convey it in the ad and talk about how the ad does that effectively. So it's basically the same thing with like, any marketing stuff that you're probably gonna do in the future. It just does the same thing, but except that you just need to logically connect all of your arguments together and write it in a formal structure, right? All right, for English paper 2, the overall structure is that you have to choose 2 books to compare and contrast in a form of an essay without actually bringing the book into the exam. So 3 books that we have already studied in class, and note that I am doing the English language and literature higher level. In the standard level, you only have to do 2 books, but we do 3 books because we take extra classes. So for the books that we're reading, we've read The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and Jump and the Other Stories by Nardine Gardner. And for the higher level book, we also did an additional book called The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, which was all super interesting. And all 3 of these books talks about war in general. And obviously when you think about these books or whatever books you've read in the past, you're probably like, oh man, no, not another war book, right? And stuff like that. I was also like that, like fun fact, I think like back when I was grade 8 or 9, my English was horrible. Like I don't even know how I got to this place. But once you continue doing this and you start, I would say this is like a coming of age session. Once you start thinking about why you're actually studying this and how this can be applied in the future, you're going to find more motivation to continue to dive deeper. Anyways, what these books really helped me think about is placing myself again in the reader's perspective and analyzing text in more detail. Mainly because in the paper 1, you're analyzing more images and graphics, but this one you can dive deep into how you can use language to communicate a message throughout an entire book. And let me just give more examples on how this form of communication will be effective. So for example, if you want to become a lawyer in the future, this is the most direct case, right? If you want to become a lawyer in the future, you need to find evidence in order to support your point. And this is exactly what English is training you, which is finding evidence from the piece of book, from the article, and then supporting it to your point. And you can kind of see that only through practice you can develop a more logical sense, because some people would just immediately jump to the conclusion without backing them up, right? And this is basically a life skill to support, right? No matter what decisions you're going to pursue in the future, you need to back them up with pros and cons, back them up with evidence on why you're going to do it, right? The potential results and stuff like that. And basically, the structure of an English essay really is translatable. And I'm just going to give a really famous example, which is Karen. Oh no, don't say they're studying outside, bro. Don't say they're studying outside, bro. Actually kidding me. Alright, anyways, let's go back to the point. Basically, how an English essay is structured and taught in school is the same thing as so many YouTubers that you watch structure their videos. For example, right, I'm just going to give a big example that you probably know if you watch YouTube, even for once, or not even watch YouTube, is Mr. Beast, right? Mr. Beast's video, if you think about it, what does he do in the first 10 seconds of his video? Long answer short, he basically delivers the promise on what he's going to talk about in the video, and then throughout the video he delivers the promise to you, right? So for example, if he's doing like a Squid Game video, he's going to be like, oh, in this video you'll be able to see 1,000 contestants compete for $100 million, and then in the video he's actually going to show you 1,000 contestants, right, visually, and then talk about what rules are going to be in the game, and then literally step by step show you how they're going to be competing, right? So this is literally an English essay, which is you will have your topic sentence, and then you will have your evidence, and then you will conclude with whoever the winner is or whatever conclusion you have, right? So it's literally doing the same structure and just plugging it into a different form, which is on YouTube, rather than just writing an essay. So this is what school or this overall English subject trains you if you think about it in this way. All right, I think we're keeping this a bit too long, so let's jump to the next subject. Business management higher level. Personally, I treat this course as more of an exploration courses on finance, marketing, operations, motivations, etc., because it is basically the same course that you're going to be doing in first year university if you go to business school, right? And it basically helps you figure out what you personally enjoy and what you personally don't enjoy, so then you can apply this to whatever startup that you want to try and build, or for whatever venture that you want to do, or at least know if you like business as a subject or not. And obviously, if you're watching this video and you don't want to pursue a business path, it is highly recommended to not do business unless you have some sort of interest. And I'm really strong advocate on doing something that you're interested in and figuring out if you like that. Even though business can be a very broad subject and many people would think that there's not really many challenges in it compared to other subjects like chemistry and biology, people think that that's much harder. It really is about how you personally see the course, right? And then we're going to get to the question which probably you're wondering right now if you want to do startup in the future, or if you've watched any other content creators out there, which is, why not start your own business and learn with online courses? And my response to that is, yes, doing that can be really effective, but it's again more about the discipline on completing the course content and really fully understanding and applying what you learn. And especially with so many distractions online, right? The new AI models coming out every 7 days, every 14 days, and everything else. The chances of being attracted to these shiny objects rather than focusing on studying core principles will be really high. And what do I mean by core principles is really talking about building the fundamentals that you personally need. So if you just think back to your early childhood, you built the fundamentals on how to pronounce the ABCD, so then you can now spell words, right? Same thing whenever you're applying it to whatever you want to do in career. Same thing can be said when you're trying to apply this to whatever career you want to pursue, which is that you need to build fundamental blocks in this specific career, or else you're not going to be lasting in the long run, right? And yes, most of the content that you've probably hear may be common sense or can be found online, but forcing yourself to stay in school and stay motivated and really try hard on building these fundamental blocks and really inputting that into your brain is really an effective way to ground down all of your principles. Because if you think about every single, probably most 99% of successful cases out there, like Steve Jobs and stuff like that, they have grounded all of the rules and they learned everything, right? They learned about, how to write properly and all of the business fundamentals in high school first, and then afterwards use that to apply to create a bigger invention, right? I'm talking about high school only right now, not university. University is a complete different topic that we can talk about later on as well. Basically, I think one of the things, especially as a 16-year-old myself who have started multiple startups, is that we personally feel that 16 to 18-year-old is a time where we have to rush, right? Rush, consume as many things as possible, find out what you like and what you don't like, your strengths and weaknesses. But in reality, we're actually ahead of the curve, because if you logically think about it, you will still have your 20s to explore whatever you need to explore, and that's the time for you to take risks and start big things with awesome people. So you will still have the next 10 years to find what you like to do. So if you just skip 2 years of your development time, you will basically do yourself a doubt in the next 10 years, because you won't have the fundamentals, and then you probably have to restudy it again and stuff like that. And diving a bit into the course content, if you guys are curious, is that on the exam, for example, there are multiple different questions. So the 2 markers are definition questions. So for example, they will ask you, define entrepreneurship, and then you will have to give a response about 3 sentences long for the 2 marks, and you will just have to point out the keywords that they're finding, and they will mark you based on that. And then you have the 4 markers, which is going to be writing a 1 paragraph peel, so point, evidence, explanation, link, and then another paragraph on pros and cons, which will give you the 4 marks. And then you have a 10 marker, which I personally see as a rigorous, quick brain training. So what you will have to do is basically they're going to give you a case, and then you will have to analyze the case and suggest, for example, 2 strategies on how they can improve their cash flow position, or basically come in as a consultant for the business. In 40 minutes, you have to write I would say around, actually depends, but you could do like 3 to 7 pages depending on how much you write. But overall, that is definitely like one of the quick brain trainings that I personally enjoy doing a lot. And then in addition, we're also going to be learning multiple BMT tools. So for example, these tools will help you analyze situations for business. So you have, your SWOT analysis, your Ansoff matrix, your BCG matrix, and many of these matrix to help you, again, come in as a consulting lens for whatever startup, or if you're going to be working for a financial institution in the future. And then you have your IA, which will be researching a case study on your actual company, and you could basically forward look on what their existing lead. So you can either look forward on what their existing projects are and predict the future, or you can look backward into one of their previous case studies as well. And then in HL, you just learn more advanced concepts. Alrighty, now we jump to the most interesting and my last high-level subject, which is mathematics. So why I'm saying this is the most interesting is because I have really controversial thoughts on this, and personally it is my most stressful subject out of the 6 subjects. And what I mean by stressful subject, it just means that some people either get the concept or don't get the concept. So I would personally say, and hearing from many other people also, that even if you do like thousands of practice questions, you may still not get the most ideal mark compared to someone who only didn't even practice, or who already knows the content beforehand. And I think with this course, it's more about how you manipulate the data, and I really can't describe the overall process with how you do it, but you just have to get it. And sometimes it can be really frustrating, especially when you're having a tight test and you have to be getting this mark and you see other people getting it, but you don't get it yourself. So actually, to explain this a bit clearer to you guys, let's switch over and take a look at a math problem which I would consider as a tougher math question that may be on the test. All right, so let me just quickly explain what I mean by challenging questions in math as I approach the math test actually tomorrow in about 7 hours. Not 7 hours, but I can't even do math. So yeah, you can see right now, like this is a question type. It's on one of the mock tests. So you can see in the beginning, it will tell you to show this identity. For those who don't do trig, this is actually pretty simple as it's already listed in a formula booklet that they give you, something like this. Boom, it's called the math formula booklet. So you can just easily find this here if you just scroll down a bit. Where is it? Basically using this, but using cotangent, so it's just flipped over. It's pretty simple, nothing, easy 1 point there.
And then the second one is should be also pretty simple, as if you understand the basics of quadratics, if you just substitute like tan into this, then you should be able to solve it equals zero, so nothing hard there. And then here comes the more challenging parts. Hence or otherwise show that the exact value of tan pi over 12 equals to 2 minus root 3, right? So you can see this part, like imagine like this, all of this stuff here is covered. Like how would you be able to jump from these two conclusions and prove this? Like sometimes it's really hard to think about that, right? Especially for math. So obviously because somehow it relates to quadratic, that's why you can think of, oh, maybe we can use a quadratic formula and find something there. That's why let's try using the quadratic formula. And then you did plug in the quadratic formula and then you figure out that somehow it matches the answer here if when you turn it into cosecant and cotangent, which is crazy. So this step in itself is already a hard 5 points. And right when you think that they can even like play how you're actually going to be able to solve these, they put you a 6 point question, which is a follow-up question from B and C. So if you didn't get C, then you're already screwed. 11 points gone. 11 points is really huge. It can get you from like the one grade downwards, especially with the boundaries, right? And you like find the exact value of tan pi over 24. And then obviously based on quadratic, you know that tan theta and negative cotan theta is square root, so that should be pretty simple. But again, you have to use the answer from up here. So I guess you don't have to actually directly show that because it already shows it here. So you could be like, oh, based on this, then you could use this. So then you do some substitution, easy algebra manipulation here, and then you turn it into this step. And once you get into this step, which is the identity, you will somehow get stuck because you don't know how you're going to continue moving on from here to a plus b root 3, right? So then somehow you have to magically, or just for someone who already done this, they obviously know this, but you just somehow need to know that you're able to use the identity again to make it x over 2, so then you could plug it into pi over 24, so then you can match this and then manipulate it so then it matches back to this and you only get pi over 12 because you're using pi over 12 up here, right? And then you can use these numbers to plug it in. So you have to somehow have that mindset and somehow manipulate the data so that it goes back to here. And for people like myself, it's sometimes pretty frustrating, especially when you're on a test condition and you're nervous and everything, right? And even in general practice, like sometimes you really can't think of this until you do practices. So math is really all about learning the patterns and understanding how you're going to be able to use the above answers and questions creatively and then plug it in. And then after that, after you solve for tan pi over 12 and then you plug this back in to this, and then you have an actual number, so then you can get an a plus b root 3 as asked in the question. So this was just an example question. Hopefully you guys understand what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, hopefully that was a quick run through and you can kind of see on how it can be really tricky and really about pattern solving. So actually a very funny thing was that since I was, I think in middle school, I was really, really good at math. I wouldn't say like, national level good, but I was not that bad in math. But I don't know really what happened. I think after grade 10, which I started my first business, and then now in the DP, really things have been tumbling down a bit. But I feel like it's more about the hard work that you put into this and really the grind mindset that you learn from doing math and doing all these practice problems over and over again. I'm just going to mention two more things, which is number one, there's a really big difference between mathematics HL and mathematics standard level. So if you are considering to do the higher level, you really have to think about whether this will be useful for yourself in the career that you want to do, as not everything needs the higher level. So for example, the program that I'm going to be doing, which is probably going to be some humanity program in university, like economics, right? Just checking the requirement itself, you don't need mathematics high level to get accepted. But the reason why I'm still doing mathematics high level is because one of their prerequisites, which is basically a first year course that you have to do, is mathematics. And if I did math high level in my high school and I'm able to get like a solid grade in it, then I'm able to use that to transfer credit, right? So that's one thing you want to be considering, which is, are you able to transfer credit? And basically what that means is you're able to skip a couple semesters so you could do something else and graduate earlier, as they all say. Anyways, now switching over to my standard level courses. The first one I actually want to talk about is ESS, which is called Environmental Systems and Societies. And if you're not taking the IB program, let me just tell you in advance that ESS is a course that is, I would say, people treat it as something that is super easy, and they really look down on this course, surprisingly. And mainly because you could think that this course is basically a summary of what you've learned in middle school science, and most people call it common sense, and then adding on a couple of environmental systems that you have to learn about. And the reason why I'm taking this course is, number one, I kind of have to do with science because that's in the requirement of the IB diploma. And now that I think of it, it's actually not a bad idea because I personally have an interest on exploring more on nature and the systems around us. So for example, if you guys didn't know, I really like doing hiking, and I actually wanted to pursue something maybe like a nature oriented startup in the future. So by taking this ESS course, which I wouldn't have if I didn't do this program, I'm able to learn more on the environmental systems, which is super interesting. And just in general, like, to be honest, like, taking this ESS course would make you learn things that you wouldn't learn on your own. And it also gives you time to research on case studies on how actual companies or actual nations are implementing these systems. So for example, I think one of the topics that we're covering right now is urbanization, and one of our research projects is having to research on how other countries have um, placed policies and placed systems to create a more sustainable environment. So for example, I recently studied Barcelona, which is a beautiful country, where they actually have a super block system where they would draw a square around 9 different neighborhoods and then block the entire neighborhood inside, so then cars couldn't really drive inside and you could only drive around it. So this would motivate people to just walk inside rather than using transportation, which would decrease carbon emissions because people will be walking, and increase the social life as well, right? So this is just super interesting stuff that I personally really like. Some other topics that we cover in ESS includes ecology, populations, and also learning about the atmosphere. So you could think about it as like earth science, basically, relating to also human science and geography and things like that. And I think one of the things that you really want to do is think deeper into how the topic connects with whatever you want to pursue. So for example, like when I'm studying ESS, sometimes I will start to question on how learning this system would be able to implement or open myself a new view whenever I'm doing, startups, or if I'm going to be becoming a venture capitalist. So for example, one of the questions that I wrote down was, how can understanding the DTM, which is the demographic transition model, which is, like the population graphs and stuff like that, predict future human needs slash pain points business should cover? And I have an arrow writing, this helps understand human cycle and what countries different DTMs are in, and it might be a potential business opportunity. So what I was saying there is, like, studying these different population graphs would help you understand maybe the needs and maybe the future changes of countries, because these population graphs goes in a cycle. So for example, if in the future, let's just say China is going to be let's just not use China as an example. Why did I bring that? Let's just say Japan is going to be a country with high birth rates and low death rates, right? Then you probably would logically think that starting a business relating to infants and selling products like that will be beneficial in the future, in the long run, because there's going to be demand for it. So then you could kind of bring cross concepts in this if you think about subjects in a deeper level rather than just looking at it in a brief and shallow level. All right, I need to go get some water. My throat is like aching. Oh, my throat is actually aching. All right, we're back. All right. Next subject would be film. And let me just talk about, I guess, like the overall nature of the subject on what you're going to do, because I think when most people think about subjects like art, film, music, and stuff like that, and taking it in like kind of a college level course, it may vary in definition depending on what you've actually heard from other people. All right, so I'm just gonna actually pull up the film IBDP guide to kind of give you more of an accurate representation and just run through it. So the course syllabus areas include reading film, which is identifying cultural context and analyzing how film elements can combine to convey a meaning. And again, this is very similar stuff that you're going to be hearing from English as well, which can be applied to film, music, or any of these art subjects. Contextualizing film, which is exploring the evolution of film across time, space, and culture. Students will examine various areas of film focus in order to recognize the similarities and differences that exist between films. So this will basically be your paper 2 in English, which is something very similar. And then exploring film production roles, which I think is a really cool part and great experience to not only like learn about the production role, but also to build connections with other students as well. As it's kind of like a memory that you can recap in the future, where basically you're going to be taking turns, either being the where basically you're going to be taking turns being the editor or cinematographer or sound designer, director, etc. And then finally, you have an extra HL part where they're going to be producing collaboratively another film. And actually, I can also tell you that in the SL part, we have already done like 2 or 3 film projects. So it's not only taking the HL course where you'll be able to collaborate with other students. Yeah, and one of the things that we're learning right now is film theory, film genre, where we basically have to research specifically a film theory, which I've personally chosen formalism because I thought it was interesting, and study historical individuals and historical directors and basically compare and contrast films. And one of the things that I think studying film helps is it helps you understand the history of culture and what people reacted towards to escape reality in film. Because if you think about it, the reason why you probably watch YouTube videos or Mr. Beast videos or Netflix or any movies is that you kind of want to break from reality, right? And studying film can really show you how film directors think about putting the scene in this specific frame so that they can convey a specific message, which can help you in whatever you're going to be pursuing in the future. And then I wrote specifically, it helps a VC understand the common trends of what people fall into, so it contributes to determining which startups to invest in. So it kind of sees and reflects the societal context of that period. For example, film is actually such a useful thing to understand and research patterns on how people reacted / wanted to rebel from based on what happened, specifically what made them bored or challenged in that era. So studying this knowledge allows you to identify patterns, apply it to look into the present world or in the future, then help careers like VC make better decisions or a factor to consider when judging what to invest or look into. Film is a similar vehicle which can also be translated to music, art, products, etc. So what I'm basically trying to say here is that identifying the patterns between all the films will kind of help you identify similar patterns for the future. And this might sound like it's a really broad concept, but if you did read a book called Robert Greene's Laws of 48 Hour Human Nature, and it's a really good book for those who haven't read it. It talks about all of the laws of human nature, no matter if it's the day-to-day interaction or the cycle of how history repeats itself. If you're able to apply similar concepts from analyzing historical films to the future and predict trends, that's just another factor to judge on what you want to be investing yourself in. Again, it requires deeper thinking on making use on how these subjects actually apply, which is something that I feel like is missing on the era of why people actually study education and study these subjects, study these fundamentals, right? And then the last subject that I take is also Chinese, and it's also similar to English, but when you do the B version, you basically do an easier version where you study about the culture, society, application in basically a different language. And an IB diploma also has 3 additional components, which makes it even more interesting. Number 1 is the TOK, where you're basically going to be thinking and questioning all of your surroundings. So for example, we will be exploring questions like, why is this object this, or why is some mathematical principle supposed to be like this, which some people would find annoying, some people would find interesting, but again, it makes you question reality. And I feel like this can also be the same and applied to your own life, where you start questioning things that you personally do and whether these habits or these things that you still do applies to building your own identity. And then you have the extended essay, where you will basically write a 4,000 word essay in the period of the entire IBDP course and is submitted at the end. And in the process, you actually have to have your own supervisor, which is one of the teachers in school, and you will have to communicate with them and set meetings and talk about your progress. And this, I feel like, is kind of like the dynamics of being in a company, because when you're in a company, you also have to check in probably with your manager or probably with your teammates, right? So this can build this skill on how you communicate back and forth and adjust timelines based on your own progress. And with the extended essay, you can choose also your own subject that you personally enjoy the most and want to delve deeper into, and then write about that. And finally, we also have the CAS, which stands for Creativity, Action, and Service. And just in general, you can obviously see why this is a super important factor, because you're going to become a more active person, more creative, and learn to be a more kind-hearted citizen with the service aspect. And I think the service aspect is debatable because some people do just the service just for the CAS itself. But if you think about it in a bigger mindset, the IB diploma is trying to train you to become a kind-hearted person and help other people as well and solve bigger issues, right? And with the creativity and the action, there's really no debate to that. Action could be, doing your own hobby, playing badminton. That's already counted as the action part. And creativity could just literally be creating this video, or if you're going to be composing a song or writing whatever Instagram post or doing whatever makes you feel creative. Alrighty, guys, switch spots again. And I just want to, before ending this video, also discuss a very important topic, which is your meaning of education. And obviously, to many different people, it can mean different things. But for me, what I meant as but for me, my definition of what education is, which you can obviously disagree or agree with, is figuring out, number one, your strength and weaknesses, which are going to be your soft skills and going to be super important in whatever you're going to be applying in the future. Find out your likes and dislikes subjects through trying a variety of different things, and basically having access to experts in that field and exploring more. So this is basically your 6 subjects, right? That's why you should do more subjects, do things that interest you, as something might open your eyes after committing 2 years into this thing. And experts are basically finding teachers and finding additional support to help you understand that subject even more. Number 3, super interesting, is building the hustle mindset. So with subjects like math or English, it requires a lot of practice to really master the work in that field. And this in itself already builds the hustle grind set and just not giving up in something. Number 4 is making you critically think and question things with your intellectual curiosity. And this, I think, is a really unique aspect with the IB diploma education, which is you have subjects like TOK, which makes you question things around you and makes you become a more intellectual person. And number 5, which is pretty underrated again, is surrounding yourself with lifelong friends and meeting new people with different backgrounds and stories, and then using that to surround yourself with your own gang and then creating and sharing your own stories as well. And no matter what education system you're in, I feel like it really comes down to how you personally approach the course, right? Are you going to be the proactive person who asks questions when you need it and not be afraid to shout out to your teacher? Or are you just going to be treating it as kind of like a mandatory thing that you have to do every single day, wake up at 8 a.m. in the morning, or even earlier, 6 a.m. in the morning, and finish it at 4 p.m., just like a normal 9 to 5 job that many people treat it as? And then the key factor all boils down to choosing a school or choosing a course that you have access to, that you personally feel like is worth investing, even though it may be something new, but eventually you're going to be gaining from it, and it really is the fundamental development of making you a more intellectually curious and more developed individual to approach adulthood. So yeah, that is my overall meaning and review of my education. I really appreciate everything that everyone have supported me along the journey, and really it's super interesting because you can see with these YouTube videos on how your mindset change, and especially with journaling as well. It helps you see how you've grown as a person, and really seeing yourself grow makes you feel more self-confident and makes you feel inspired to continue living on. So before we end this video, I'm just going to talk about some life updates, which is number 1, I recently did a 9-hour hike with a friend of mine, Jasper, who I've known for close to 8 years now, which was amazing. And we actually climbed the second most rigorous mountain in Hong Kong, and yes, we nearly died. Okay, maybe we did not nearly die, but yes, it was challenging, but at the end we managed to make it, and it was one of the most refreshing things to do. So if you have some spare time, definitely go enjoy yourself in nature. Number 2, I've really been a lot more into pursuing the intellectual curiosity part and just researching on things that I'm interested in. So for example, recently I have been doing a lot more research and delving deep into Catholicism and diving into how the church runs these masses every single Sunday. And I also completed a course from Pat Flynn himself, a successful entrepreneur, on how to make money online and just learning about these systems itself and just researching about credit cards and listening to Steve Jobs. So these were some examples of things that I would do to lock in myself and really find things that I'm interested in as well. So yes, all of these information will also be attached in the description because I do actually have a Notion page where I share everything on all of the progress updates and everything that I learned. So if you're interested, feel free to check that out as well. And finally, we have revamped our Gen Z Fastlane podcast. I know, guys, it's been 4 months that I haven't posted, which is crazy because 4 months felt like years, especially every single day when I feel slightly guilty for not doing any action, mainly because I'm flooded with schoolwork. But now, since I'm on break, and this is actually the last day of my break, I do have some time to revamp the podcast, and we're going to be having some exciting guests coming up in March, starting off with people including, if on the top of my head, Harris Cheng, who's the founder of Jupiter AI, and his product ranked #1 on Product Hunt. Dhruv Kotkari, who is the founder of DocuBridge, building an AI model to help financial businesses like private equity and investors deal with data in a more easy way. Shasi Paniti, who is an expert in aerospace engineering and currently a student at the UC Berkeley MET program. So yeah, this is going to be a super exciting couple months. I'll link all of the stuff that I mentioned in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.